I want to make sure that, that we are on the right flight. So you are in the track smart metering rollout, experiences, and how to scale. You are on the flight going, quite a journey we're doing together now. You're going over to the United States, and you come back to Belgium, and then we go over to the UK and land here again in Amsterdam. Millions of miles. And hopefully a lot of interesting insights in ongoing and even completed smart metering projects. So my next speaker that I am happy to and have the pleasure to announce, that's Laney Brown from Central Maine Power in the United States. Central Maine Power is a subsidiary, a company of the Iberdrola group. And you've heard in my introduction, I'm from Landis & Gyr. And was I not a good host the last few presentations? And was I not acclaiming all the nice successes that have achieved with my competitors' meters? Huh? I'm a fair guy, but now listen what I have to announce now. So Laney Brown has not only done a great project over in the United States and completed a meter rollout, she could actually she got a reward from one of the leading utility publications in the US as one of the top 12 champions in smart grid and smart metering. And you know what? She has achieved this with Landis & Gyr meters. I had to say that. Hey, Laney, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. I think maybe at the very least I can prove that it is possible to survive a smart metering program deployment. So just an overview of Central Maine Power. Again, we are a subsidiary of Iberdrola, and actually it's been a great opportunity here to work with my colleagues from Spain and the UK, so that's been a great opportunity. We are the most northeast state in Maine, above Boston. That's typically what people know. We serve over 630,000 customers. We have 11,000 square mile service territory, relatively rural, with some urban population, but relatively rural. And from a wireless mesh perspective, the most treed state in the United States. So an interesting challenge. We take considerable pride from an organization perspective to be very strong in customer satisfaction. And we have won the J.D. Power's Satisfaction Award 6 times in a row, one, in fact, during our deployment. So we were happy about that. And we've also won an award for storm recovery as well. Just an overview on our program. Probably most importantly, at least for the initiation of our program, we received a $96 million Department of Energy Smart Grid investment grant. Essentially allowed a 50% match on the full program, which obviously makes our operational benefits and the business case very good. We have installed, we're 625,000 meters, so essentially 99.9% complete. We have fairly well deployed our full network, over 7,000 network devices. One thing that I think has been noted, this project itself was a tremendous IT technology deployment. So we either upgraded or installed 10 new systems, and I'll walk through some of the functionality in those systems. Because of the Department of Energy grant, we also kicked off a consumer research study looking at how consumers respond to various means of usage information. And I think very importantly, as we went out and selected vendors, as we thought about the processes and the development of systems, one key thing that we thought about is that this program and this technology was really a platform for future opportunity, for smart grid growth. And I'm happy to say now that that foundation is placed, and we now get to move on into more interesting or increasingly interesting areas. The other thing that's been an interesting component of our deployment is that we are now the biggest wireless provider in the state of Maine. And that wasn't necessarily what we intended. And that comes with challenges. And so it really requires a whole new skill set. So that's been an interesting challenge. But it is in place, and it really is providing that foundation for smart grid opportunity. I'm told to be patient. Okay. One thing that was interesting about the smart grant investment from the Department of Energy is a very strict schedule. So it was actually funded through the stimulus program, and we had to be shovel ready. And so we had essentially 2 years to deploy the network itself and put the systems in place. We received our regulatory approval in February. And essentially had negotiated in about a 6-month time frame about $100 million worth of contracts. We had previously, before we actually had received regulatory approval, in parallel gone out to bid with all of our vendors. We had a staged approach. So we had our meter and network deployment moving forward simultaneously, obviously, with our system deployment. And we completed our infrastructure deployment in about a 20-month time frame. And then our system deployment was really stepped. So we wanted to ensure that the foundations were in place. Our biggest operational benefit was meter reading. And obviously, with high volume of turnover of meters, we needed to ensure that we could do that in an automatic way. So the first phase of our program is meter to bill. And we actually started installing meters in September of 2010, and we generated our first bill in April of 2011. We then moved into a phase 2, customer service enhancements. So part of the component, part of the operational benefits from the program was the ability to remotely reconnect and disconnect customers. But we also were providing a portal for our customer service representatives to be able to work with customers on their usage information, to also do an on-demand ping. So if a customer called and wanted to know about their power if they were out, or if they wanted to walk through high usage concerns, a customer service rep could essentially ping the meter, get a read, and support a customer. That was also put in place during the customer service enhancement phase. We also have launched a mass market web portal, and we're in the process of launching our commercial and industrial customer portal as well. And then the last phase from a systems perspective was a couple of different components, a demand response program. So we are a networks business, but we have a requirement to support dynamic pricing from suppliers. And so we actually are launching dynamic pricing in the 4th quarter of this year, so by the end of this year, and essentially billing beginning next year. We also have put in place an outage management system, and we are, I think I heard this, we are actually in the process now of learning about the data that's coming into the system. We have used the information to help clear during storms and restoration, but there is a tremendous amount of information there, and so we're in that filtering and learning process. And then lastly, there was a regulatory requirement to essentially settle from a capacity perspective to settle on 100% of customers' usage. So typically we did settle on profiles, but customers actually have the ability, if they can manage their capacity at peak, system peak, they actually can receive a savings. It's called an ICAP tag. And we have individual ICAP tags so that customers can actually save during those peak periods. So we're in the process of implementing that as well. From a technical perspective, I mentioned the trees. We also have mountains. We also have the ocean. So we have some technical challenges in our state. The other thing, because we are somewhat rural, cellular coverage in our area is very limited, actually. And in fact, our governor tries to, as you're driving up the major highway in our state, the governor tries to engage visitors during certain spots where there's no coverage because he doesn't want them to make a phone call in those areas just because it reflects poorly on our state. So we had a challenge. We had a technical challenge on how we resolve this. And so we essentially selected an AMI system that could support a private WAN creating a wide area network across our service area that became very important, again, for supporting smart grid capabilities. And it also has essentially a neighborhood area network. So collecting the meter information and aggregating it at essentially takeout points and then backhauling it to our head-end system. The components are made up of essentially 45 gateways or takeout points, over 800 extender bridges, and those components essentially bridge the WAN and the NAN. The other key thing for us as we were looking at obviously this smart grid foundation was high bandwidth. And so we wanted to make sure both at a WAN and a NAN layer that we had the future proofing, the capability of having high bandwidth to support not only existing but future capabilities. And so that was key. That was key for us. The meters themselves essentially support interval data. Most of our residential customers, we were getting hourly interval data from them, and our C&I customers are 15 minutes. We do have the capability essentially to change that, so it could be less than 15, but that's pretty much the approach that we're using today. The majority of our meters, over 95%, have disconnect switches in them. And the minimum from a meter perspective, there's 4 channels minimum, so that we have the ability to essentially export to support net metering. And those were both requirements that we put forward in terms of, again, future-proofing a system, but also regulatory requirements as well. So what we've done so far, we have essentially billed over 5 million bills using our AMI data. We have avoided over 70,000 truck rolls. And actually, we're now doing our reconnects, disconnects at scale. So we do thousands of disconnects and reconnects a day. That's been a really interesting process. And I'll talk a little bit about that. We typically drive about 2 million miles a year historically, and we've reduced that almost by half. This is actually something I just discovered the other day. We actually have reduced our calls around estimated bills by 95%. So significant drop. So we're starting to see the operational benefits really filtering through the organization, and that was exciting to see that. The other thing too, in our service territory, where in some cases in the winter, some of our meter readers are actually using snowshoes to read meters, we've reduced our estimated bills by 92%. So we're currently reading our estimated, or reading annual basis, we're reading 99.7% of our meters. I think one of the things that I'm supposed to talk about today is some case studies of experiences that we've had and how we've resolved them. And so I've focused on a couple of different things that I think are key trends in smart meter deployments. One is customer focus and engagement with customers and some of the issues that we face there. One is technology. And then also the customer, very importantly, and the approaches that we could take as we were deploying the system on ensuring that not only are we making our operations more efficient and our processes more efficient, but we're also making them better for our customers. Unfortunately, I was part of a landmark case in the United States. And I say unfortunately because we were the first regulated utility, or I should say regulated opt-out order in the US. And that was an interesting one. It actually happened about a quarter of the way through our deployment. So it was critical that we could manage that process well and learn from that. Customers, I think, I've heard throughout the day, I think it's universal. Customers are concerned about data privacy, about security, and about the health from the meter's health effects. And so the approach that we took was very strong, working with our regulators, very strong strategy on mitigation of complaints. We have a very low barrier to entry in our regulatory process. In Maine, 10 people can come together and make a complaint, and that actually will open a regulatory investigation. So we need to manage that process very well. We have extensive outreach to government officials through the entire state. the thing that we found, it was interesting. It wasn't as we initially thought. The biggest risk from an opt-out perspective for us was not about the customer. It was about towns. We can manage an individual customer opting out, but if a whole town doesn't want us to come, that's a real issue. And we actually had 3 towns that were at risk of opting out. And in one case, we actually had a town that customers had to opt in. So we literally had to reach out to all of the people in the town and communicate to them and get them to opt in. And fortunately, 97% of them did, but it was a challenge, and it created a risk to the deployment. And I should say, as we looked at a lot of the issues that we were facing, the key things that we had in front of us as a deliverable for the project was on time, on budget, and it works. And we did it, but it was really important as we looked at the issues that we were facing, that was in the front of us every day, on time, on budget, and it works. And that was definitely the approach we took here. So we moved forward very quickly with an advanced education with regulators, key stakeholders, and government officials throughout the state of Maine. And we used what we called T-minus 75. So 75 days before we moved into the deployment area, we would reach out and we'd essentially assess the town or the area and determine, is there high risk in this area? Have we had any issues with government officials? Have they prevented any permitting historically? Do we have any concerns there? We would also reach out to those officials and offer any information, offer briefings that they might want. And then essentially, once we had done the outreach, obviously presented to the officials if they needed to, we would then move forward with deployment. We then actually moved into a more tactical approach from the town itself. So we would reach out to, again, the town officials, police stations, et cetera, and also our employees in that town, and let them know when we were coming and the approach that we were taking, so that if there were any concerns from customers who might call the police officer because there's a man in a van driving around or sitting in front of my house, they would understand and could address those concerns. So we reached out to over 320 municipalities through this process, and were very successful in essentially avoiding, again, the biggest risk we had, which was towns opting out. The other thing I think is, as I had mentioned, we take customer satisfaction incredibly seriously. And the other thing, too, as I mentioned, is we were sort of opening wide a number of our legacy systems. And one of the key guiding principles that we had on this project was, don't just automate a process, make it better. So as we were opening our systems and looking at our processes, we really wanted to make sure that we were improving services for our customers. And so we really re-engineered nearly all of our business processes as we move forward with essentially operational efficiencies and customer in mind. And just some examples of essentially the work that we did, particularly around reconnect, disconnect. A couple of examples. A customer's moving out today. They would call and say, can I essentially close out my bill today? Can you take a final reading? And before we had smart meters and the processes we put in place, we'd have to do it next business day. And it might be a couple of business days. But essentially with the smart meter, we could take, actually while the customer service representative was on the phone, we could take a final reading and we could close that customer's bill right then and there. We have that capability to do that today. We also wanted to make sure we actually had the ability to schedule. So a customer called and said, can you essentially turn off my power or provide a final bill as of 2 p.m. That's when I'm moving out on Tuesday. Previously, we would say, well, we'll be there that day. But today, we can say, yes, at 2 o'clock, we will essentially final your account. And so obviously much more customer focused. And finally, we do in the States, in Maine, we do occasionally disconnect for non-payment. And so we wanted to make sure if customers pay their bill, whether they do it online after hours or through essentially a phone call after hours, that we could reconnect them as quickly as possible. And so we essentially have enabled the fully automated process. So if a customer calls and pays their bills after hours, they can essentially get reconnected immediately. And we have typically been reconnecting customers in about 7 minutes from essentially the time they make a payment to reconnection of service. And in fact, we have had customers say to us, No, you didn't disconnect me. That was just an outage. Because you've reconnected me so fast, I don't think you should pay, I don't think I should pay for reconnection. So it's been an interesting learning process. And then finally, and I think this was maybe talked about in some cases, it's a rapidly evolving technology. And I think the benefit is that you can quickly add functionality. But it does require significant infrastructure from a testing and trialing perspective. And it's important, the other thing too that's important is that what we learned is especially over a long deployment period, you're operating this network and you're deploying simultaneously. And that creates challenges, both in terms of skill set and staffing, but it also creates challenges in terms of not impacting your customers. So we had to manage that process of how can you essentially upgrade your head-end system or roll out firmware, but not preventing getting reads from our customers or not preventing essentially execution of service orders. So we've put in place a pretty significant testing environment. We've got 3 test environments. And we also realized that we quickly needed to have essentially an environment at scale, or essentially a production type environment, so that we could see what impact that might have. And so one of the things that we put in place is controlled measures when we're rolling out anything into our network, really a very staged approach. But we also put out essentially test meters in the field so that if we needed to test, disconnect, or reconnect, we didn't have to. Actually, we were using our employees for a little while, but they kept opting out of that. So we needed to actually install some meters in our area so that we could do more thorough testing, really at any time of the day we needed to, at some volume, and not impacting our customers. And so we've put essentially both a controlled rollout approach in place and also test meters in our production environment so that we can more thoroughly test the approach. The other thing that we know is key, and I think there's also been dialogue around this, is providing customers a benefit. Customers don't really care about their meters. And we found that out actually when we had to communicate with our customers about opting out. Most of them could care less what their meters were, but they do want to understand their usage. 68% of customers essentially say that they want to be able to see their usage and control their energy bill. And so we've actually offered 3 programs to our customers to understand their energy usage. One, as I mentioned, is a mass market energy, essentially web portal. We provide daily, weekly, monthly information with a lot of content around efficiency and understanding their usage. And we have done that both with kilowatt hours and dollars so that customers can understand that better. So you can go online essentially and see how much money I spent, how much was my usage today if you wanted to. And we also include temperature as well because that's important for us as well. We have bill alerts where customers can receive information either by mail, email, text, or call blast on essentially where their usage is and how it compares to a goal that they may have set. And customers really appreciate that information, more real-time information about their usage so that they can monitor more closely where they are. And then the last thing we've also done, and this is actually what I find incredibly exciting, we're launching now essentially a website for our middle school students. We have in Maine a laptop initiative where every 7th and 8th grader has a laptop. So we're essentially combining that with the fact that Maine actually has the highest penetration of smart meters in the States, putting those 2 things together and building curriculum around essentially energy portal, energy management. And that's been recognized really as an innovative thing for 7th and 8th graders. And I think it starts that efficiency, understanding of efficiency early on. And we expect that probably the 7th and 8th graders will be harassing their parents to turn off lights. I don't know about unplugging the iPod, but definitely turning off lights. So we're excited about that program as well. So I think in closing, as I had mentioned, I think we are thrilled essentially to have our smart metering program completed, not only because it is an interesting and challenging task, but also because that provides really an opportunity the foundation for so much more innovation. We have before us really innovation in terms of from the meter up to the distribution network on smart grid and automation, and essentially from the meter to the customer in terms of opportunities for new services. So our system is really serving as the platform for future development for our company, and we're excited about that.
Quite impressive, Laney. And I'm sure you will have hundreds of questions because you're the champion. You're one of the 12 champions, right, of smart grid in the United States. So like before, we take one question right now, and there is a microphone coming around. So who would have a question? They're still all so impressed. So we'll leave it for later on for the panel. Thank you very much. And coming to my next speaker, who is actually representing a neighboring country.